Hello friends, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you the EcoBorder landscape system, and I'm going to be showing you how to make an island in your yard to look like this. So here's an example of what the EcoBorder looks like, and this is just a 1-foot section that I've cut off. I bought this from Sam's Club in a 4-foot section, and you can see that behind me. But basically what it is just a composite rubber material made out of ground up tires actually, and then tinted with a color to whatever you want. Mine is kind of a dark burgundy, almost brownish redwood color. You can also get it in like black and gray as well. And it's pretty flexible. You can see it flexing, and this is just a 1-foot section. The 4-foot sections do flex quite a bit more. And it allows you to put it into whatever shape that you're looking for. So with this, you put it down on your grass, flush on top of the grass so there's no digging, which makes it nice. And then I always put weed stop underneath it before I stake it down. And then there's these little yard stakes that come with it. And the yard stakes just drive right through the center of it and then pound it down with like a rubber mallet in order to get that all the way down into the ground. And then on the side of it, there's these little holes right here on the side, and it comes with these black stakes. Little black stakes go into each side like that, and then you connect the other piece right onto it, and I'll show you how that's done. So let's take a look, and I'll show you how I built my rock island using the EcoBorder landscape border. So one thing that you want to make sure that you're considering when you're laying this out, if you're doing a circle and you want to make it a full complete, it's kind of like putting together your kid's slot car track or a train set. Make sure that the pieces are all going to fit together to make one giant loop or one giant circle. Otherwise, once you get to the end here, if you've got anything that is hanging over too much, then you can cut pieces off of that. But you can't add on to it. So make sure that you've got it sized appropriately and that you've adjusted your curvature all the way around whatever size area you're trying to do in order to make it all fit and come back together to make one solid piece. So I'm starting to put in the weed block and really start hammering stakes down. I heard one guy talking about putting the stakes about halfway in is all, and then stuffing the weed barrier under and then continuing to hammer it down. So putting them halfway in is going to help you keep the shape that you're looking for as you're working on the project. But what I found as I'm moving and I'm placing them a little bit deeper and actually hammering them all the way in, that allows you to curve it a whole lot more without having separation at the seams. So you can maybe notice right here, there's a seam. And then moving around, there's a seam right here. And there's a little bit of a gap there. Possibly could fill that in with a little bit of the caulking or something if you're that concerned about it. Honestly, I think it's pretty good. But back to the stakes, once you pound them in, you can pound them in and then it's going to hold it in place. And as you continue to go around it, I'm just stuffing in the weed barrier underneath. And then I'm taking my stakes and pounding them through. That way it's going to bring the whole weed barrier and hold it underneath, as well as stake it down. And then, like I said, like here is an example of where it's separating because of the pressure that's on each side. However, once I start getting the rest of these stakes hammered all the way down, then I'm going to be able to hammer those 2 stakes in as well, and it's going to make a nice seal in order to not give you that really wide separation or a gap. Okay, so here's the edge of this EcoBorder. This is, you can see the holes in it where it's going to connect to the other piece. And I'm using my 7/32 drill here to drill that out. See, I'm going in and then also drilling while coming out so all of the chips come flying out with it. And I'm going in, you can see, at about the length of the drill bit to the end of the threads. It's about as far in as I'm going. That makes it about the perfect size for the pieces to slide in nice and easy together. If you go anything less than that, it still leaves quite a bit of a gap and it's really hard to push it in. So after you've drilled that out with that 7/32 drill bit, then you put these attachments in and they push in a lot easier now that you drill them out a little bit, but you still don't want them to be too loose, so they're still just a little bit snug. And then I'm just going to tap them in. And then that allows you to marry the two up and join and connect them like that. Okay, so then when it comes time to put these two together, you just line up the holes. And again, I drilled out both sides of these and you slide them in together. If you don't drill them out, it doesn't go in. It just leaves a huge gap there. And, it's just not realistic. But drilling them out gives you a pretty smooth union right there. You can see that. And then once you've got that union there, you can put a spike in on each side of the union in order to hold the union flush, and then that allows you to maneuver the rest of the piece how you need to, but the spikes are going to keep it held in place so you don't get a separation. All right, so as you can see here, I've got a little bit of overlap with my design.
Your head's cut off.
Well, then you have to move the camera. Is that better? Now is this cut off? Okay. So as you can see here, I've got, what are you doing?
I don't know. I want to get the cats.
We're not going to do a video of the cats.
Okay.
Are you still recording?
Yeah.
All right, so you can see here I've got a little bit of overlap from where I'm at. The two pieces aren't going to join exactly even, so I'm just going to, looks like I've got about a piece worth of overlap. I'm just going to cut off one of these sections. I'm going to use the Sawzall to do that. So that was actually a little bit more difficult than I thought. I thought that the Sawzall would work a little bit better. You can see how it is sort of black on the inside here, and that makes sense with how these lines, wherever it was cut before, are black. But Sawzall works good. It's a nice smooth cut right where I wanted it, but it was a little bit more difficult than I thought. Here's an example where we've got a little bit of a separation in our EcoBorder. You can see it there at the root. And I'm just going to fill that in with some caulking. Little bead down the front, which wasn't a very wide spread, but there's quite a big spread here in the back. So I'm just going to fill that in completely with this caulking. And once I get it there, I'm just going to use my finger to smooth that out a little. Doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna have to add a little bit more right there. So I can either just get a little bit on my finger and add it in slowly, or I can use the gun to add larger amounts if I need to add more of it. So I'm just gonna slowly finish this job off by adding some in with my finger. And here's an example of the caulking after it's dried. You can see this color that I put in there is just about the perfect color to match. If I back it up here, You really wouldn't even tell that I put it in there, but it does fill in those cracks rather nicely. You can see over here is another example where it was a little bit of a wider crack, yet it's still filled in real nice, dried up good, and is a pretty decent color. I do have one example over here on this side where I only did the bottom half as an example, so you can see the difference there between the bottom half and the top half being caulked and not being caulked. So depending on the size of crack that you have will determine if you decide to use that caulking or not. So at this point, I'm putting the weed barrier underneath, getting ready to stake it. I'm holding it in place at an angle that's going to flush those gaps up. Now that that's hammered in, it's going to stay in place, and so I can do the same thing to this piece, and that gap is going to be as minimal as possible. So now where we had that huge gap before, you can see not too much of a gap there. And if we want to, again, we can come in and we can silicone that just using some like red silicone or black silicone. But you know, if that's something that bothers you, you can definitely do it. Otherwise, you got a little crack there. Compared to concrete border, those are going to crack too. So it just depends on how meticulous you want to get. So out of about 15 of these 4-foot long pieces, each of them with 4 stakes each, I've only had one of the stakes break off, and it went all the way into the ground. It's still holding the piece well. It just lost the head. It broke off when I was using the rubber mallet to hammer these in. Here's a section that I'm working on. I just had a couple pieces extra, so I thought I would redo this section around my mailbox, and rather than doing a curve or a circle, it's just rather kind of a straight line here. It's just a little wavy landscape line, and this worked really good too. But I think that using it in this fashion rather than circular, like we see in the rock island, is going to make it a little bit easier to put it together and avoid some of those gaps that you'll need to fill with some of the caulking. So a couple of great uses for this EcoBorder landscape curtain. All right, so here is my EcoBorder after I did some weed eating around it. From that previous example, you could tell that just mowing over it didn't quite bring the grass height down to the level that I wanted it to. So I did have to weed eat it, so if I had to evaluate that claim, yeah, it's definitely convenient to run the mower right along the edge of it. But in my case here, even with placing this edging right on top of the grass, I'm still having to weed eat it to get the really nice flush look that I'm going for. Well, that's it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video review of EcoBorder landscape system and what I do with it in my yard. And as always, God bless. Have a good day. We'll see you next time online.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm ready for you to come on to me. If you push that big button in the middle, it starts recording.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that it's recording.
Mm-hmm.
Is it recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So as you can see here, I've got a little bit of overlap with my design.
Your head's cut off.
Well, then you have to move the camera. Is that better? Now is this cut off? Okay. So as you can see here, I've got, what are you doing?
I don't know. I want to get the cats.
We're not going to do a video of the cats.
Okay.
Are you still recording?
Yeah.